Hello, and welcome. I know it's been a while, and I had planned on having some other videos released before this one, but unfortunately time has not been on my side. So today I introduce you to one of my latest patterns, which is called the Just Checking Checkbook cover. And that's all it is. It's just a simple checkbook cover, except it's not one of those boring, cheap plastic ones that you get when you open up your checking account at the bank. I just wanted something a little fun to pop in my bag, and the fact that I can make it out of literally any print I want is just a huge perk. So stay tuned and you will see how you make the whole thing from start to finish in both versions, the original and the Connie tuck. I'm concerned. So let's just start off with the pattern pieces. You're going to have one main exterior piece. You're going to have one backing lining piece, one main lining piece, two trim pieces, two tab pieces, and then you're going to have two transparent vinyl pieces for the little flaps on the inside. For this for this checkbook, I am actually, this is my first time ever using cork officially. Real cork, good quality cork. This is just a black cork that I got from So Sweetness. I believe it was $35. It wasn't more than $40, but I cannot tell you how many times I screwed up cutting this stuff, and it's driven me absolutely nuts. And since this stuff is so expensive, like the most expensive vinyl I've ever used is $40 for a yard. And that's a specialty textured vinyl, and I love it, but I don't use it that much because the bags that I make out of it tend to be more expensive. So this one is going to definitely be a pretty pricey checkbook cover, but I think it's worth it because it's something small and I wanted to try cork. One of the recommended fabrics that I have listed on the instructions for the exterior is cork or vinyl. I highly recommend using cork or vinyl. For the lining pieces, you can use cork, vinyl, or cotton. I'm using waterproof canvas, which is also an option. This is just regular waterproof canvas. I have previously sewn this up with the PU waterproof canvas, which is actually much thinner than this, and that one tends to fray a lot easier than the standard waterproof canvas. So I'm going to recommend that for thickness factor, you try to go with something that's about the same thickness as regular waterproof canvas. You can use cotton, but make sure that you interface it very, very well. And if you are using any kind of material that frays, you are going to want to take a lighter to any of the edges, especially on the main lining piece, because you're going to be cutting out these thin slits. And this is also where your checkbook is going to go into and your check register. So occasionally you're going to be slipping things in and out of there. You're not going to want it to fray. You could dab some fray check on it, or maybe do a little bit of glue on the back. But make sure that if it's not a thick waterproof canvas like this, you absolutely interface it, because you're not going to want to use paper thin cotton, because that's just waiting for trouble. Then you're also going to need a couple of trim pieces. Now there are two different versions of the trim. This is the standard trim, which I'm going to show on this checkbook. The other one is one that one of my testers actually came up with, and I have dubbed it the Connie tuck. And you will see that at the end of the video, and I'll show you on a different checkbook how that's done. It's actually pretty genius and simple. I'm not surprised that I didn't come up with it because my brain doesn't work that way. So stay tuned through the end of the video, and I'll show how to do that. These are also going to be done in cork, just because I'm trying to keep this all fluid. And then you're going to need the 2 tab pieces, which will be sandwiched. If you do not want a closure on your checkbook cover, then you can omit these. Don't bother cutting them out. And then you're going to have this little piece, which is the little tabby thing that folds down over your register side. And this larger one, you don't have to have it, but because I use checks with carbon copy, you want that little divider between the carbon and the check behind it, because you don't want anything that you write to transfer over to the carbon behind the next check. So first thing I'm going to do is get all of this stuff out of the way. And I'm going to go over the pattern pieces because why not? So there's your little piece for the register flap. And then you're going to see that there are 2 different sizes of the tabs. The smaller of the 2 is the one that I am going to be using now. That's just for this standard tab. The longer of the 2 is going to be for the Connie tuck method, because that widens the edge of the checkbook, so you're going to need a longer tab to reach. And then there's the checkbook flap for the check side. And then you're going to see that there are 2 different pieces for the trim. This is the standard trim. And then the Connie tuck, as you can see, is a bit larger. And you're going to see that this says "cut me out" all over. And that just means that everything on the inside of this bold line has to go. Don't try and save the 1-inch mark. If you need to measure to make sure your piece printed out properly, measure it before you cut. Once it's measured, go ahead and cut it out. And then lastly, and probably the most confusing piece out of all of these, is the main piece. And you're going to see on here there are 2 oval boxes, and right here in red it says only cut these boxes out of the main lining piece. So you're going to want to cut those slits out of your actual pattern piece. Then you're going to use this at least 4 times. First, you're going to want to cut your exterior piece out. Do not cut the slits out of it. Then you're going to want to cut 1 piece of lining. Do not cut the slits out of it. Then you're going to cut a second piece of lining, and you do want to cut the slits out of it, because that is going to be the piece that you slip your checkbook into. And then you're also going to want Decoville Heavy. If you want it to be lighter weight, you can use Decoville Light or any other kind of stabilizer that you want to use. I would not recommend Peltex, because Peltex, depending on the kind that you're using, tends to be overly thick for something like this. And it's essentially going to feel like you're folding cardboard, which is why I recommend Decoville Heavy, because it's more soft and fluid and it gives you a nice fold. And then, of course, you're going to need interfacing if you are using anything that has a much thinner, if it's not waterproof canvas, cork, or vinyl, you're going to want to interface it. So you're just going to cut the same piece out. Now, there are 2 holes that you're going to want to cut out on this, as well as on each flap. And you will see that there is a circle for the placement with an X running through it. If you just punch a hole in the center and then use a pen or whatever writing tool you want to use to replace those lines that you cut out, you're going to get a cute little X on your fabric. X marks the spot. So that's better placement than just putting a circle telling you to punch a hole and then mark it. So you're going to want to do that on both sides if you are adding a tab, and you are going to want to do it on both sides of the tab. One side is for the rivet, the other side is for the magnet. Now, as far as the hardware is concerned, all you need is a magnet or a snap. I'm actually going to be using a snap on this one, just because they're small and much easier to use. And I kind of like the look of it. But you can absolutely use a magnet, but you're going to want to make sure that it is a 14 millimeter magnet or smaller. Let me see if I've got one here. All right, so these are both testers, so ignore the top stitching and everything looks wonky and crappy. So this one, I used a 14 millimeter magnet and it works just fine. But as you can see, it is large and relatively bulky, and because it has to go in between the layers, it makes it a little bit harder to top stitch around, but it still works. If you don't want that bulk, then you can just use a snap that you can install after the top stitching, and it works just as well. It's a lot smaller, it takes up a lot less space, creates a lot less bulk. So I would highly recommend using a snap over a magnet, but you can absolutely use whatever you prefer. Next, I'm going to show you a little trick or a tip or whatever you want to call it that I use on my transparent vinyl pieces. As you can hear, I've got my steamer going, and sometimes you end up with your vinyl being rolled and you need to straighten it out, or you get these odd little marks on here. I don't know how well you can see that. You can see it a little bit. It's a little cloudy. I'm going to show you how to clean this off very easily. So you're just going to take some steam to it. Make sure you get both sides really well. And then I just use a random piece of fabric. This is some Polar fleece, and I just wipe it all down. Comes off relatively easy. You just have to make sure you don't miss any of it, because I tend to be rather blind. And you can do this also for pieces that are curled. So as you can see, this piece came curled up, and you can't use that in a wallet. You can stitch it down, but the edge is still going to curl up. Or did I say a wallet? I meant checkbook cover. Anyway, so you're still going to take your steam. It's going to soften it, and it will probably curl back in on itself. But once you get it nice and steamy, it will start to unroll again. And then all you need to do is just lay it out flat. Lay something on top of it. Just make sure that whatever you lay on it doesn't have any texture to it. So you could put like your pattern piece over it. And then you could take like tablet cover and just lay it on top. And just let it sit until it cools. And then when it's nice and cool, it should be nice and flat for you to use. If you need to do it again 1 or 2 times, go ahead and do that. I don't need this piece, so I'm just going to put it up. But I am going to clean off my other piece here, and then we will get to sewing. All right, so first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you attach your stabilizer. Decoville Heavy goes on the back of the exterior, and I use Decoville Light on the tabs. All right, now we're going to set that aside, and you're going to want to grab your tab pattern piece. And just grab a clip and attach it to one of the tab pieces. And now this is what I was talking about with the whole X marks the spot thing. So you cut a hole out of the pattern piece itself, the template. And then you're just going to continue the lines where you cut the hole. And then when you remove the pattern piece, you have your perfect little X's right where they're supposed to be marked. Then you're gonna go ahead and puncture your holes, or if you're using something with prongs, go ahead and make your marks and cut your slits. And then go ahead and install the magnet. If you're doing a snap that goes through both layers, hold off. What you're going to do first is take a piece of double-sided tape if you like to. I know I'm obsessively using double-sided tape constantly and consistently, but my machine can take it. And you're just going to stretch it across the entire tab. If you don't want to use double-sided tape, you can use a little bit of glue, or you can just use some clips, totally up to you. Then you're going to take the other side and you are going to lay those wrong sides together, just like so. Now, if you are using a magnet and it's already installed, hopefully you went with the 14mm. You're going to want to top stitch around the entire edge. And what you're going to do is first you're going to pull your threads long, and I'm going to show you how to hide them. Keeping in here. All right, so starting with one of the short edges, I'm going to put that side underneath my needle. And I am using a 5mm stitch on this. Use whatever you feel comfortable with for your top stitching. Okay, if you already installed your magnet, you want to make sure that if you want your top thread to be your top stitch, you're going to have to cover up that magnet with like a piece of tape or a small piece of fabric or something, so that it stops or at least lessens the amount that it sticks to your machine. If you don't have a metal piece on your bed, then you're going to have less to worry about. But as far as I know, most machines have at least a metal plate right there, so your magnet will get stuck. And then just go ahead and top stitch slowly. When working around curves, something like this, you want to, at the curve, drop a stitch, lift your foot, turn your fabric, drop a stitch, lift your foot, turn your fabric, drop a stitch. You want to go slowly, step by step. Now you want to make sure that you stop stitching when you are 1 stitch away from where you started. Pull your threads long and trim from your machine. So now you've got 2 threads on one side, 2 threads on the other. You're going to grab a hand sewing needle and thread your threads through the eye. This needle is probably too small, and I'm too lazy to find, or too big, but I'm too lazy to find a smaller one. All right, so both threads on one side through the eye of the needle. And then you're going to go back through the fabric through either the first or the last hole. It doesn't matter. Can you see that? Probably not, since my camera doesn't want to focus. And you're going to turn your needle 90 degrees. And yep, see, this needle is too thick. Too big. All right, so turn your needle 90 degrees and pop it through so that it comes out between both layers. I don't know how well you can see that. So pop it through, pull the needle all the way through, pull the threads all the way through. Now, as you can see, you can't tell exactly where the thread went. All right, so now I've got all 4 threads coming through the side. Pull the needle off, and I like to use my foot to hold the tab still. And then you're just going to tie a couple of knots. 1, 2. And then snip your threads as close to the knot as you can. Now you can add some fray check, or you can melt it. My thread zapper is on the fritz. I need to change the tip, so I'm not going to use it right now. But as you can see, you can no longer tell where the stitches started and stopped. Nice and clean. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you could pull all of your threads to the back side and knot them and melt them, and then that can be reserved for the end that you put the rivet on. That way it'll be attached to the back of the checkbook and you won't be able to see it. Next, you need to puncture the holes. If you've already installed your magnet, you won't be puncturing a hole there. But if you are doing snaps, or a snap rather, you're going to go ahead and puncture your snap hole. Oh, this thing is too big for my hand. I don't know what I did with my pink one. And then you're also going to puncture your rivet hole. Go ahead and install your snap, half of your snap. And then what you're going to want to do is edge paint it. You can leave it raw if you want to, but I highly recommend edge painting just because it elevates it just a little bit. All right, so I got my Whoops, I just dropped a piece, didn't I? My male side, I'm going to set aside since that's the piece that I'm going to install in the exterior. And my female side, I will install on this piece. All right, now the tab piece is ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and grab the exterior. And if you have not already, you can use the pattern piece to mark your hole placement. And I've gone ahead and punctured the holes just to be a little bit quicker. If you are using a directional print, what you're going to want to do is fold the exterior in half and hold the tab in place. The snap side, do you want your print directionally facing up, or do you want it directionally facing up on the back? Decide which way you want your print, and then make sure that you lay it down properly. If you're going to have your closure with the print vertical, make sure you've got it laying vertical in front of you. So I'm going to put my, doesn't really matter because I'm not using a directional print on this one, but I'm going to put my rivet through the exterior and then add my tab and then add the cap. Now, when you are installing your rivet, make sure you do not do it super tight for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to mash and mangle your rivet. Two, you still want your tab to be able to move freely. So just squeeze it down enough for it to set. Just like that. See, everything still moves. Good to go. Okay, so now that I've got the tab on that side, I am going to install the male end on the other side. And that's going to be it for your hardware. Very simple, right? All right, so turn that over to the wrong side, and if you want to use double-sided tape, you can. If you would rather use glue or clips, you can feel free to do that too. Then you're going to grab the backing lining piece and line it up. Adjust it as necessary. All right, so once you've got that down, you're going to grab the main lining piece. And for this one, I just like to throw a single piece of double-sided tape right down the center. All right, and then peel that off. And you are going to center this. Oh, if I didn't say it already, you want to lay this down right side up. I am just trying to make sure that I don't skip any steps. Of course I'm gonna forget something because that's just who I am. Now you can start adding a few clips if you want. You don't have to. You will need them, but I like to get a little bit started with this. Also make sure that this is right side up. So both of your lining pieces are right side up. Also, if you have any fraying in these openings, I highly suggest taking a lighter to it before you put it down. Yeah. All right, so I'm putting the little tab on this side. Now this piece is 2 inches wide, so you're just going to make a little mark at the 1 inch spot. Move your tab out of the way. And then line it up and add some clips. Oh, I could feel that clip wants to break on me. And then I'm just going to add a couple more clips down the side. Turn it around, and you're going to lay this piece. You know what? I think I cut out the wrong piece. I will be right back. So we're just going to go ahead and add clips to hold everything in place. And then we're just going to baste everything down. All right, so now that that's all basted down, we're going to flip it over to the right side, or to exterior side up. And I'm actually going to do something pretty weird. I'm going to use 3 rollers, and we are going to make lines. Gotta love lines. So the first one we're going to do is 3 1/4 inch in from one of the short edges. So it's going to be the one with either the snapper magnet piece or with the tab. So 3 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to take a second ruler and lay it down to hold my position. Then I'm going to measure the other side because I can't really measure evenly on top of the snap. So I'm going to line this up, 3 1/4. That looks good. Then I'm going to take a third ruler because I like to make things complicated. And I'm going to butt that up against the second ruler. And then I'm going to take my Choco pen, remove the third ruler, and make a line. I can totally words today. All right, you can see that nice and bright. Now we're going to go to the other side. Again, I'm going to take this ruler, measure 3 1/4 inches in from the short edge. Put this ruler down 3 1/4 inches. Then this ruler and chalk line. Now I'm going to put this one out of the way, as well as this one. Okay, and then we are going to make another line at 9/16 of an inch, which is halfway between 3/4 and 5/8 of an inch, in from either of those lines. So 5/8 and 3/4, split it right down the center. I'm going to slightly offset it because ruler math. And then, let's see. Nope, that's still slightly off. There we go. Close enough. You just basically want to make a center line. And then I'm going to top stitch down these lines. Now you want to make sure that if you've placed your lines correctly, they will end up about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch above the openings. Because if you're not careful, you will stitch on top of your little flap. All right, so you're going to back stitch at start and stop and top stitch right over your lines. All right, trim it from your machine. Trim the other threads. I need to sharpen my scissors. All right, and then go ahead and remove your marks. Look how nice that looks. We're almost done. Just jumping in to add that I have put double-sided tape on the backs of both pieces of trim. I initially filmed this, but at some point I cut it out and then I lost it. So just pretend you saw me do it and continue on. All right. Next, we're going to grab the trim and you take the backing off of one side, just like that. And we're going to go ahead and line it up. Now, if you have problems lining it up, one thing you can do is take a ruler and hold it up against the side of the checkbook and then slide and press your trim up against it so it's nice and flush. Otherwise, if you have something like a little box or something that you can put that can be stationary for you to push it up against, you can do that. You can use the side of your machine foot a little bit. Press the main part right up against the foot and then kind of use it as a guide to press the trim. Just make sure that your machine is off or your needle is in a down position so you don't accidentally graze your hand. And do the second one. And if you basted close enough to the edge, all of your basting stitches will now be hidden. Remember to move your tab out of the way because it does not get tucked underneath the trim. Now you just want to make sure that everything lies flat and straight. If you need to make adjustments, you can definitely do so. I think it's a little bit more important to make sure that the inner edge is completely straight because the outer edge you can actually trim down before edge painting, so it's not that big of a deal. So we're gonna go ahead and top stitch this sucker. Make sure that you pull your threads long and go slow. You want to stop about one stitch before the first stitch. And I seem to have lost my snips. Found them. All right, and we are going to once again do that little needle trick that we did on the tab. Turn the needle 90 degrees once you've stuck it into one of those holes. And push it out through the outer edge. All right, pull the needle off, pull the threads all the way through, and then repeat on the other side. If it's hard to move your needle through, grab some hemostats or pliers or something that will take the pressure off of your fingers. And then tie the threads off and tuck them inside if you need to. So now we are down to the last step where you just top stitch the outer side. And once again, I'm going to start near the center. Pull your threads long and then stitch. And then finish it off the same way once again. All right, there you have it. Now, if you need to, you can trim down the edges, and then you can go ahead and do a little bit of edge painting. But before I edge paint, I'm going to show you training. Training is important when you have something that has to have a certain type of structure. And if it's not going to reach that structure by itself by just sitting around, you have to train it. And I bought a couple hundred of these clips on Amazon. I have them in 2 different sturdiness levels or strengths. These black ones are not as strong as these silver ones. These ones I tend to use on bags, and these ones I use on smaller things. And they don't leave permanent marks unless you have some really crappy vinyl. And all I do is add them to the corners as well as a couple here. Okay, so that's going to help you get to the final shape. There you go. So it's going to take me a few hours to get this completely edge painted. So I will show you at the end of the video what it looks like. So now if you've made it this far, keep watching and I will show you how to do the Connie tuck. Okay, so now I've reached the point where I'm doing the Connie tuck. And for this, you're going to need the Connie tuck version of the trim. So go ahead and grab both pieces and you are going to place them wrong sides together. When I've done this before, everything slipped around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach some, I'm going to add some 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape close to the outer edge, just so everything locks in place. And I'm only doing this on one side of the trim, meaning one layer of the trim. So all 4 sides of one trim. All right, and then I'm going to peel this off and do it one side at a time. And I'm just going to place them wrong sides together and try and line them up as best I can. All right, and just go ahead and top stitch the 2 layers together, wrong sides together, around the outer edge. And just like before, I'm going to start in one position. I'm going to stop one stitch before the first stitch, pulling threads long at the stop and start, and then I'll tie them off in the center. Sorry, I have the hiccups all of a sudden. And I'm going to grab a sewing needle, a hand sewing needle, and thread the top two threads together. Or, you know what? I can't words. I'm going to thread them through the eye of the hand sewing needle. And then I'm going to go through either the first or the last hole. And this time I'm going to have it come through the center of both layers towards the inside. All right, I'm going to tuck it under my foot again and tie it in a couple of knots. Remember not to pull too tightly, otherwise you could pull the threads themselves too tight on the exterior and it will be very obvious. All right, so now I've got 3 little knots in there, and I'm just going to trim it down just like that. So now if I go and mix it all up, you cannot tell. Well, maybe you can a tiny little bit. Haha, there's the bubble from the lift from that. But in the end, you won't be able to tell. So once we've got that down, as I show in the instructions, I don't trust my skills. So I'm going to put more double-sided tape. Surprise, surprise. Just around the outer edge, as close to the edge as I can get on the checkbook piece. All right, so I'm going to peel these all off. And then you're going to kind of hold it open and tuck your checkbook in between the 2 layers. Now it's going to be a little tougher for me since I chose to put the double-sided tape on here, but that is completely personal preference. And then just kind of adjust it as necessary. Try and make sure that all of the inner edges are straight. And pull it in as tight to the center as you can. You also want to make sure that all of your basting stitches are completely covered. All right. I'm definitely not a pro at this method by any means. This is only the second time that I've done it. So I'm going to have to get in more practice, but that's about as close as I can get. I want to make sure it's relatively even throughout. And then you are going to go ahead and top stitch around the inner edge. So I'm going to switch my foot again. Pull my threads long. And I'm going to stop and start in a little bit of a different spot than I did with the, wherever it went, the exterior top stitching or the outer top stitching. Okay, and then no back stitching, just pull your threads and go. I'm going to add a little bit of Wag magic because I got a lot of double-sided tape. Pull my threads long again. And for the last time, we'll do the needle trick. This time I'm going to pull them through towards the outside, because then any threads that are sticking out can be edge painted over. And again, underneath the foot to tie them off. All right, so now I'm going to go and top stitch this one, or edge paint this one rather, and then I will show you the finished result of both checkbook covers. Thanks for hanging out with me, and hopefully you were able to follow along in making the Just Checking checkbook cover. Which version did you make? The original? Or did you try your luck with the Connie tuck? I'm fond of both styles, and I honestly don't know which one I want to keep because I know that one of these is going inside of my Back Company wallet. Feel free to join the Hollow Bag Creations The Patterns Facebook group and show your makes. Show it all off. Show me everything that you've made from Hollow Bag Creation Patterns. Thanks for hanging out. I am out of here. Bed is calling me. And now I'm rambling. I need to shut up. So yeah. Bye.